big questions that hangs over the head of Miraculous Season 6 is what the hell's going on with Lyla? I know a lot of people online call her Cerise now, but after 5 seasons of calling a character one name, for me it tends to stick. So unless in the episodes they start regularly referring to her by this name, I'm going to stick with what makes it easier for me. Sorry, not sorry. Now when I say, what the hell is going on with Lyla, you might expect that I'm trying to start something negative, go off on some terrible tangent. But that's not what I'm trying to do today. In fact, it's rather the opposite. I think that the Lyla storyline in Season 6 has been really well done and has opened up a whole new world of theories and speculation as to what's been going on. That's really what I want to talk about today. What is going on with Lyla in Season 6? I don't think we really have any answers here, but I just want to use this as a sort of catch-all for any sort of speculation. That being said though, we need a little bit of context for where we are and where we might be going in the future. We first met the character of Lyla way back in the Season 1 finale Volpina. Back then it was hard to imagine that she'd go on to be the big villain of the show. After all, here she was presented as a lame, jealous and petulant liar who was willing to BS her way into a romantic relationship with Adrian. She serves as a bit of a lesson to Marinette, who uses her Miraculous for the wrong reasons to expose her and embarrass her in front of Adrian, which ends up getting her akumatized. Unlike pretty much every other akumatized villain in the history of the show, she doesn't actually learn her lesson at the end, and seemingly she swears a blood feud against Ladybug. After this, Lyla doesn't appear again for pretty much the entirety of Season 2 until we come to the Hero's Day 2-part finale, where she's used as Volpina to create the illusion of Cat Noir being murdered by Ladybug to try to kickstart Gabe's big grand plan. Here is where we met her first mother and learned that even with her, she's a habitual liar who's able to wrap pretty much every single character she meets around her finger. At the same time, we also learn that she's massively pathetic, having sheltered in her bedroom all of this time out of shame for being humiliated by Ladybug at the end of Season 1. Season 3 sees her get a bit more screen time, where a lot of it revolves around manipulating the class, hating on Marinette and Ladybug, as well as trying to get in with Adrian with almost no success. She's sort of a minor villain here, and an annoyance, but she isn't framed on the same level as the big players just yet. That being said, they were very clearly planting the seeds for her to have a very big story arc, with the hints that she was going to be a potential identity for the future Hawkmoth that's referenced in Time Tagger. Season 4 would go on to keep building the Gabe-Lyla alliance and also added another mother to her collection, but only in the back half of the season. Otherwise, she didn't really appear that season until in Season 5, she pretty much became the show's secondary antagonist, mostly being a foil to Marinette in the same way that Monarch would serve as a foil to Ladybug. At the end of that season, she ends up being vanquished by Marinette and her Lyla persona, while she also managed to get her hands on the Butterfly Miraculous in the aftermath of the battle between Ladybug and Monarch, where Gabe ended up making his wish and dying to save Natalie. This gives her the chance to use the Miraculous for her own agenda, and she becomes Chrysalis, apparently. Is this her actual name? Can't actually remember anybody saying this during Season 6 at all, but in fairness, I might have just forgotten. Either way, this gave her the chance to try to seize the Ladybug and the Cat Miraculouses and make her own wish, and by doing so, she nearly deleted the entire timeline the show exists on. Only the intervention of Bunnix managed to save the day and allowed Ladybug to stop Lyla from figuring out the secret identity of Ladybug, allowing her to steal the Miraculouses from her while she slept. Oh, and we also learned that she has a third mother who she's stringing along as their perfect little girl. I guess what I'm trying to say here is that the build for Lyla has been slow and steady, but by the time we got to the start of Season 6, she was already being presented as a far more useful and competent villain than Gabe ever was. I mean, she won the entire thing in a special. It was her villain debut with a masterpiece plan that didn't even need to have her fight anybody. She just snoops and writes things down, and then she steals the Miraculouses to make her wish. It's genius. Hell, she only lost because of, honestly, plot armor. This in turn leads us into Season 6, where we haven't really seen her at all beyond a few vague hints here and there, her manipulations of the akumatized villains, and her demented ramblings during the occasional episode ending after the villain's been defeated. Despite that though, she's quickly turned into what I think is one of the show's most compelling characters. Her motives are still steeped in mystery. We don't really know what her wish was, other than it completely shattered the reality we all know, so clearly it's pretty big and powerful and dangerous. On top of that, despite us knowing that she'd be attending the new school, she hasn't actually appeared in person. This could simply be a repeat of her role in much of the first saga, where she'd only appear in person in the last couple of episodes of the season, or it could be something else. We'll get to that. Plus there's the question, is she working with anybody as of right now? What was that light that appeared behind her at the end of the previous season that shocked her? She seemed pretty afraid at that moment, so what's going on? Okay, so time to slap on our trusty tinfoil and start speculating about things with reckless abandon. Who is Lyla/Cerise? Where is she at in the story right now? As in, is she lurking in the school with all her old classmates? We've had a bunch of fresh characters that have been introduced to the story recently. I previously made a video talking about the episode Climatic Queen, in which a character named Aglaé sort of comes in out of nowhere. We'd previously met the character of Aurora, who was of course akumatized into a storm villain, but we'd never seen this character before. On top of that, she seemed to be rather close with the main group of friends, even before all of this went down. So therefore something's happened off screen. Immediately, this character got the fandom's spidey sense of tingling. After all, a random character just appears when we know a character who lies and changes identities could be lurking? It feels obvious. Plus, when the French dub was all we had, there was absolute certainty she was going to be revealed as Cerise at some point. After all, in the French dub, they share the same voice actress. Plus, as I said, she's just a deeply suspicious character who comes in out of nowhere and manages to say just the right things to get Aurora akumatized. Then she gets taken to safety by the heroes and they both conveniently leave her all alone with nobody else while they go off to fight. That being said though, I'm pretty sure they have different voice actors for the English dub, which I guess could kill the theory right then and there. The last time they did a secret identity plotline was for season 1, where Gabe and Hawkmoth were technically different people. Then there's that big reveal that, ooh, it's the same person, but it was already pretty obvious because the voice was delivering the lines in pretty much the exact same way, just slightly more deep and menacing when he's Hawkmoth. Thus, you would expect that perhaps they'd keep the same voice actor for Lila for any of her hidden identities. It's not like they changed her voice when she did that in season 5, so therefore, you could put a pin in that. But this is the age of creators trying to be a bit more meta and throwing people off the scent, twisting their words in interviews, altering trailers to add things or remove things that aren't actually in the movie/show or won't play out that way on screen. These are things that have well and truly become commonplace, and so I wouldn't go so far as to say you can definitively rule it out either. She's got to be somewhere. Another option's Sublime, but pretty sure she has the same English voice as Aglaé, and it's a similar concept here. If it's going to be anyone, I'm inclined to think of Aglaé for now. We probably need to see a bit more to know for certain though. I've also seen speculation that Lyla has people working for her, which I suppose could be a thing as well. Just makes me question how. Who would all these people be and why would they help her? She lives in a creepy murder basement with piles of books filled with information and plots, so how did she meet these people? Does she reward them, give them money? Is she promising to give them wishes too? There have been instances of people watching from the shadows of different scenes. I think the idea being that you're supposed to think it's Lyla, especially since Akumas randomly appear near there pretty quickly, almost the minute a person gets mad. It's far more rapid than Gabe. We also never get the scene of Lyla actually sending them out. This then makes you question, she working with anybody at all? Does she have goons? Is she answering to anybody? I'll be honest, in the early stages of the season, maybe the first couple of episodes that were released, or even before the season began, I was pretty convinced Lyla was not going it alone. I thought there was a huge chance she was going to be in some sort of partnership with Tomoe, even if they were probably both planning on betraying the other when the opportunity presents itself. However, I think we need to potentially put a pin in that as well. I might come back to that in a minute. I mean, we know from the Illuminati business with Natalie and the post-credits sort of scene from the Ivan episode that there's this whole secret council of elite folks that want to get their hands on the Miraculouses. Back in season 5, Gabe very easily cast Lyla adrift and was made clear she was a powerless outsider. I doubt that he'd do that if she was a part of that council, and on top of that, I find it even harder to believe that she'd be able to worm her way into this secret council so quickly. So I don't think she's involved with that side of things. This in turn leaves us with a lot of questions. Who are these random people watching from the wings? Does Lyla have goons? Are they Illuminati goons? What's going on? I think there's probably enough evidence to suggest it could be either of these things at this stage of the season. It is hard to say until we know more, but I do think there's a chance that it's a bit of both. You go into the season and you expect it's going to be Lyla doing that and keeping an eye on things from the shadows, but it's not until you see this organization exist that perhaps the wheels in your head start to turn and suggest it could be the opposite, that these people work for the council instead. It's all very intriguing, and I wouldn't be shocked to see that they both have allies out there and they're not all just working together, not all happy families. But then we also have that whole blue light thing that appeared behind Lyla and freaked her out at the end of season 5 after she got her hands on the Miraculous of the Butterfly. What the hell's going on with that? It didn't seem to have any sort of impact on the story at all, so what's going on there? I suppose there's lots of options. I mean, she gave herself time travel powers at some point for the London special, and that's usually blue. Maybe that was just her going back in time to give herself the idea in the first place, although I will admit that would be a tinfoil hat crack theory, and a pretty trash twist, not gonna lie. What is more likely is that it's either a character we've never seen before, which is very possible. Let's not forget the Illuminati business was conjured up out of thin air in a single episode. It does seem like this season is going hard on the twists and turns overall. Either that or it's someone like Tomoe, which is a more boring answer, but it's certainly plausible. And speaking of twists and turns, I think there are more in store. I think in this season, or maybe just this arc in general, as it might last longer than just this season, it's going to be betrayals galore. We already know that Natalie is working with Tomoe, but her dad wants her to betray her once they get the Miraculouses and give them to him instead. I think there's a good chance that Natalie's also going to try to betray the council in general to protect Adrian. Otherwise, I'm rather confused about her storyline. We're also being primed for a betrayal within the school, where it seems likely Lyla is lurking under some sort of alias or has somebody there that's helping her out. Then there's the pending Gabe reveal, which will count as a betrayal by Ladybug, at least in the eyes of Adrian. We already get a taste of that with the Alia discovery scene. What other betrayals could we count on? Well, it all ties back into Lyla and Tomoe. Earlier I said that Lila's not working with the council, and I think that is accurate. However, does that mean she's not working with Tomoe? No, it doesn't. I think there's a good chance she is. The reality is that it feels clear that every single member of that council is out for themselves. I discussed this in a previous video, so I won't dive too into it now, but I think each of them likely has an altered perspective on what their perfect world scenario actually is. We already know that Natalie's dad's planning his betrayal, so why not have Tomoe cooking up something with Lyla on the side? Of course, with the express intention of betraying her too in the end, whilst Lyla clearly just wants her wish and has no express intention of ever helping anybody else get what they want. I just can't help but shake the feeling that there's going to be a lot more to what we've seen in the story so far, but we need more episodes to help make sense of them. Judging by how it worked with Gabe, we didn't really get much info about what he was after until the end of his debut season as Hawkmoth, so we might be waiting quite a while for any sort of answers to any sort of questions. But I don't find myself being upset with that. We're in a really exciting time, and it's crazy to see how much better Lila's character's become in this new arc. I mean, she felt extremely one-note for so many seasons, then she gets the nod as the big bad, and suddenly she's a truly goated villain. Then there's also the question of her wish. One that was so powerful, it seemingly wiped out the entire timeline. What the hell sort of wish was that? That's another thing that's firmly in the wait-and-see basket. After all, it requires more intimate knowledge of the character. But all we've ever gotten for 5 seasons is smoke and mirrors and fake identities. Now she hardly ever appears except as her villain form, and so the progress is very slow, but it's not in a bad way. It doesn't feel snail-paced. Because in the meantime, we're getting heaps of stuff from other characters. We're fleshing out dynamics and ships and future plot points. So yeah, we haven't really solved anything today, but I guess I just wanted to highlight what a mystery Lila's become, and how I think it sets the long-term future of the show up for success, in terms of its plot progression and pacing, as long as they get those reveals perfect. It's a pretty big ask, but I'm hopeful. I haven't felt this optimistic about the franchise in years, and I'm excited to see where it goes from here. And so with all that being said, these have been my opinions, and now I'd like to hear yours. What do you think about the writing for Lyla in Season 6? Do you like it? Do you hate it? What about the mystery surrounding her character? Do you have any potential answers? I'm curious for your thoughts, so make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and let me know.